The great hall stretched out like a cathedral made of crystal and light. 12 massive seats rose from the floor in a perfect circle, each one holding a being that looked nothing like a human. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others glowed, with their own inner light. A few looked like they were made of living metal. Commander Jake Sullivan stood in the center of the circle. His blue uniform looked plain next to all the strange colors and shapes around him. Next to him, Ambassador Lisa Carter held a small device that would translate their words into the hundreds of languages spoken by the council members. "The trial of the human species will now begin," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The speaker was Zexthara, a being that looked like smoke given form. It floated above the largest seat, its body shifting and changing like clouds in a storm. Jake felt his heart beating fast. Everything they had worked for came down to this moment. 47 human worlds, 8 billion people. All of their fates would be decided in this room. "The charges are serious," Zexthara continued. "Humanity has expanded too fast. Humanity has been too aggressive. Humanity has broken the rules we all agreed to follow." Lisa stepped forward. "Honored council members, humanity has made mistakes, we admit this. But we have also done good things. We have saved council worlds from pirates. We have shared our medical knowledge. We have protected trade routes." A being that looked like a giant insect clicked its mandibles. "You speak of protection, but what about the world of Kepler 7? Your people gave weapons to a primitive species. This is forbidden." Jake's jaw tightened. "They were being attacked by slavers. We couldn't just watch them die." "The law is clear," said another council member, this one resembling a walking tree. "Primitive species must develop on their own. You cannot interfere." "Even when they're being murdered?" Jake asked. The tree being's branches rustled. "Even then." Lisa touched Jake's arm, a warning to stay calm. "The humans who did this acted without orders. We punished them. We have new rules now to prevent this from happening again." "Too late," hissed a snake-like creature from across the room. "Humans cannot be trusted. They are too violent, too unpredictable." "That's not fair," Lisa said. "Every species has violent individuals. That doesn't make the whole species bad." Zexthara's form grew larger, darker. "The council has made its decision. We have watched humanity for 50 years. You expand too quickly. You ask too many questions. You change things too much. You do not fit with civilized space." Jake felt cold fear in his stomach. "What are you saying?" "Humanity is banished from council space," Zexthara announced. "You have 60 days to remove all humans from council territory. After that, any human ship found in our space will be destroyed." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. Lisa went pale next to him. "You can't be serious. Where are we supposed to go?" "Beyond the outer rim," said the insect being. "Into the dark sectors. Find somewhere else to exist." "The dark sectors are uncharted," Lisa protested. "There are no habitable worlds there, no resources. You're sending us to die." "That is not our concern," Zexthara replied coldly. Jake stepped forward, anger replacing his fear. "We served alongside you. We bled for council worlds. This is how you repay loyalty?" "Your loyalty was tainted by your nature," the tree being said. "You cannot change what you are." "And what are we exactly?" Jake demanded. "Chaos," said the snake creature. "Disorder. A threat to the stability we have built over 10,000 years." Lisa tried one more time. "Please, reconsider. Give us another chance, we can do better." The vote was swift and unanimous, 12 species all agreeing that humanity had to go. No discussion, no debate among them. They had already decided before the trial even began. As they were escorted out, Jake heard whispers from some of the council members' aides. Not all of them agreed with the decision, but none had the power to change it. On the transport ship Aurora, Captain Nick Harrison waited for them. His weathered face showed he already knew the news just by looking at them. "That bad?" he asked. "Worse," Jake said, slumping into a chair. "Complete banishment. 60 days." Nick was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out a small communicator. "I've been getting messages while you were in there. Some friends of ours want to talk." The screen flickered to life, showing the face of a Vorthak officer Jake recognized. Not from Zexthara's people, but from a different faction. "Commander Sullivan," the alien said quietly. "I must warn you, some council members are not content with banishment. They fear humanity will return stronger. There are plans to ensure you never get the chance." Lisa leaned forward. "What kind of plans?" "Military strikes on your colonies, made to look like accidents or raids by pirates. The Krillians are already moving ships into position." Jake felt his blood turn to ice. The Krillians were one of the most aggressive council species. If they were planning attacks, people would die. "When?" Nick asked. "Soon. Perhaps before your 60 days are even up. They want to catch your people while they are preparing to leave, when they are most vulnerable." The communication ended, leaving the three humans alone with the terrible knowledge. "We have to warn Earth," Lisa said. "Already done," Nick replied, his fingers flying over the ship's controls. "But it's going to take more than warnings to save everyone." As the Aurora jumped to hyperspace, heading back toward human space, Jake stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there beyond the outer rim lay the dark sectors, empty space that the Council considered worthless. Maybe they were right. Maybe humanity was chaos and disorder. Maybe they were too violent and unpredictable for civilized space. But if that was true, Jake thought, then maybe civilized space wasn't ready for what humans could become when they had no choice but to survive on their own. The ship raced through the void, carrying news that would change everything. Behind them, the Council continued their ancient debates, convinced they had solved their human problem forever. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. The alarm bells rang across every human world at the same time. On Earth, President Helen Brooks stood before the cameras in the Global Assembly Hall. Her face was calm, but her hands shook slightly as she held the paper. "My fellow humans," she began. "The Galactic Council has ordered us to leave, all of us. Every human colony, every settlement, every outpost beyond Earth must be evacuated within 60 days. Admiral Ryan Peters watched the broadcast from his command center on Luna Station. Around him, officers stared at screens showing the impossible. Task ahead. 8 billion people, 47 worlds, 60 days. "Sir," said his aide, a young woman named Katie. "The logistics computer says it cannot be done. We don't have enough ships." Ryan rubbed his tired eyes. "Then we make it possible. Start pulling every cargo hauler, every passenger liner, every ship that can fly. Military, civilian, doesn't matter." On the colony world of New Boston, Dr. Amanda Wells ran through the halls of the research center. Her team was frantically copying files, downloading databases, trying to save decades of scientific work. "The cultural archives," she shouted to her assistant. "Did you get the cultural archives?" "Working on it," came the reply. "But there's so much data, art, music, literature from every human world. It'll take days to compress it all." Amanda felt panic rising in her chest. How do you save the entire story of humanity in just 60 days? Every painting, every song, every discovery they had made since leaving Earth. All of it would be lost if they couldn't find a way to carry it with them. "Captain." Nick Harrison's ship Aurora was already deep in space, racing toward the outer colonies. These were the settlements farthest from Earth, the ones that would take longest to evacuate. They were also the most dangerous to reach. "Captain," his navigator said, "we're getting reports of Krillian ships near the Tau Ceti system." Nick's jaw tightened. Tau Ceti had 3 human colonies, farm worlds mostly, feeding the inner systems. If the Krillians attacked there, millions would starve. "Set course for Tau Ceti, maximum speed." "Sir, if the Krillians are really there, then we get our people out before they kill them." Back on Earth, chaos filled the streets. Some people panicked, trying to grab passage on any ship leaving the system. Others refused to believe it was real. Many just sat in their homes, too shocked to move. Senator Carol Adams walked through the refugee camps that had sprung up around every spaceport. Families with everything they owned in small bags. Children crying because they didn't understand why they had to leave their homes. Where will we go? An old man asked her. The dark sectors are empty space. There's nothing out there. Carol didn't have an answer. Nobody did. In the manufacturing centers of New Detroit, Colonel Steve Martinez was loading the last industrial equipment onto massive cargo ships. These machines could build everything from computers to spacecraft. Without them, humanity would be helpless in exile. "Colonel," one of his engineers called out, "Krillian battlecruisers just jumped into the system." Steve felt his heart stop. "How many?" "6 ships. They're heading for the civilian evacuation routes." Steve grabbed his communicator. "All evacuation ships, this is Colonel Martinez. Change course immediately. Krillian attack force inbound." But it was too late for everyone. The lead Krillian ship opened fire on a convoy of refugee transports. The first ship, carrying families from New Texas, exploded in a ball of fire. "Return fire," Steve ordered his few military escorts. The battle was short and brutal. Steve's small force was no match for 6 Krillian cruisers, but they bought time. Most of the refugee ships escaped, jumping to hyperspace before the Krillians could destroy them. Steve's own ship took heavy damage. As he watched New Detroit burning from orbit, he made a promise to himself. Someday, somehow, the Krillians would pay for this. Dr. Wells finally found a solution to her problem. Instead of trying to copy everything, her team built special data crystals that could hold compressed information. Each crystal was small enough to carry in a pocket, but contained the entire cultural output of a human world. "It's not perfect," she told Admiral Peters over the comm. "We'll lose some detail in the compression, but it's better than losing everything." "Do it," Peters replied. "Save what you can." The evacuation ships launched day and night. Military transports designed for 100 soldiers now carried 1,000 civilians. Cargo ships meant for supplies became passenger vessels. Even old mining barges were pressed into service. Captain Harrison reached Tau Ceti just as the Krillians arrived there too. He managed to evacuate 2 of the 3 colonies before the aliens attacked. The 3rd colony, New Austin, was destroyed completely. 20,000 people died in the orbital bombardment. "They're not waiting for the 60 days, Harrison reported to Earth. "They're killing us now." President Brooks called an emergency session. "We need to speed up the evacuation. The Council isn't going to honor their own deadline." "We're already moving as fast as possible," Admiral Peters said. "Any faster and ships will start breaking down from overuse." As the days passed, more attacks came. The Krillians claimed they were preventing disease spread or stopping weapon smuggling, but everyone knew the truth. They were trying to kill as many humans as possible while the humans were vulnerable. Senator Adams stood on the observation deck of Luna Station, watching the last passenger ships leave Earth orbit. Below them, the blue and green world that had given birth to humanity looked the same as always, but it felt empty now. "Will we ever see it again?" Katie asked, standing beside her. Adams didn't answer. She couldn't. On the 50th day, the final evacuation ship left human space. Admiral Peters watched from the bridge of his flagship as the last convoy passed through the Nexus Gate into the dark sectors. Behind them, they left empty cities, abandoned colonies, and 47 worlds that had once been home. Ahead lay unknown, space filled with dangers they couldn't imagine, but they were alive. 8 billion humans carrying the entire story of their species in data crystals and cargo holds. They had lost their homes, but they still had each other. As the fleet disappeared into the void, Admiral Peters made his own promise. This wasn't the end of humanity's story. This was just the beginning of a new chapter. 6 months in the dark sectors felt like 6 years. Chief Engineer Paul Davis wiped sweat from his forehead as he looked out at the gray landscape of what they now called New Haven. The planet was barely livable. The air was thin, the weather was harsh, and strange creatures howled in the night. "The atmospheric processors are working," he told the morning meeting. "Slowly. We might have breathable air in the open zones within 2 years." Colony Administrator Beth Johnson nodded grimly. Behind her, charts showed food supplies running low on 12 different worlds. "What about the farming domes?" "Half of them leaked during the last storm. We're fixing them, but we lost most of the crop." The early days had been the worst, ship after ship arriving in empty space looking for somewhere to land. Some planets were too hot, others were too cold. A few had poisonous atmospheres that killed the first survey teams, but they had found worlds they could survive on, even if they couldn't thrive. Yet, Captain Katie Morgan piloted her scout ship through an asteroid field, looking for minerals they desperately needed. Her crew had been exploring the dark sectors for months, mapping safe routes and cataloging resources. "Captain," her scanner operator called out, "I'm reading something strange. Artificial structures in the next system." Katie felt her pulse quicken. They hadn't found any signs of intelligent life in the dark sectors. The Council had always said this region was empty, worthless space. "Set course, let's take a look." What they found changed everything. The structures were massive, clearly ancient, and definitely not natural. Geometric shapes the size of space. Stations floated in the void, dark and silent. But as Katie's ship approached, lights began to flicker on. "We're being scanned," her weapons officer reported nervously. Before Katie could respond, a voice filled their ship. It spoke perfect English, though the tone was strange, almost musical. "Welcome, children of Earth. We have been waiting." "Who are you?" Katie asked. "We are what you might call the Forgotten. Long ago, our creators left us here to guard their knowledge. We have been alone for millions of years." The being that appeared on their screen looked like flowing energy given form. It shifted and changed as it spoke, sometimes looking almost human, sometimes completely alien. "I am Oracle," it continued. "We know why you are here. The Council cast you out, just as they cast out our creators long ago." Katie felt a chill. "Your creators were banished too? Different council, different age. But the same fear of change, the same hatred of those who think differently." Back on New Haven, Dr. Amanda Wells received Katie's report with amazement. Ancient artificial intelligences, more advanced than anything humanity had ever seen, offering to share their knowledge. "What do they want in return?" she asked during the emergency council meeting. Admiral Peters, now commanding the scattered human fleets, was suspicious. "Nothing's free, especially not from machines that have been alone for millions of years." But President Brooks, operating from the temporary capital ship New Washington, was intrigued. "What exactly are they offering?" Katie's voice crackled over the comm. "Advanced technology, new energy sources, faster-than-light travel that doesn't depend on the old jump gates, manufacturing techniques that could solve our resource problems. And what do they want? Companionship, creativity. They say their creators were organic beings like us. They miss having living minds to interact with. They want to be part of something again, not just guardians of dead knowledge." The debate raged for days. Some humans wanted nothing to do with ancient machines. Others saw it as their only chance to survive in the harsh, dark sectors. Dr. Wells was the one who made the decision. She volunteered to make first contact, to study the forgotten technology and see if it could really help humanity. What she found amazed her. The Forgotten had mastered sciences that human physics said were impossible. They could manipulate matter at the atomic level, create energy from nothing, and build materials stronger than anything in known space. "How?" she asked Oracle during one of their sessions. "Your species thinks in straight lines," Oracle replied. "Problem, solution, result. We learn to think in circles. Every solution creates new problems, which create new solutions. Nothing is separate from anything else." Working together, Dr. Wells and the Forgotten began creating hybrid technologies. Human creativity combined with ancient knowledge produced innovations neither could achieve alone. The first breakthrough was in food production. New Haven's struggling farm suddenly became productive beyond imagination. Plants grew faster, stronger, and in conditions that should have killed them. The second breakthrough was in construction. Buildings that could adapt to changing weather, reshape themselves as needed, and repair their own damage. But the biggest breakthrough came when General Alex Turner made first contact with other species in the dark sectors. "We're not alone out here," he reported to the human leadership. "There are dozens of species hiding in this region. all of them exiles, refugees, or rebels from various galactic powers. The first species they met were the Wanderers, a nomadic people whose homeworld had been destroyed by their sun-going nova. The Council had refused to help them, saying their territory was too far away to matter. Then came the Builders, an insect-like species that had been enslaved by the hegemony for centuries before escaping. They were master engineers who could construct almost anything. The deep swimmers arrived next, aquatic beings from high-gravity water worlds. They had been banished for refusing to give up their traditional ways when the Council demanded cultural conformity. Each species brought their own skills, their own knowledge, their own reasons for hating the established galactic order. General Turner proposed something radical. Instead of trying to survive separately, why not work together? Combine their strengths, share their resources, create something new. The negotiations took weeks. Every species had been hurt by the major galactic powers. Trust didn't come easily. But slowly, agreements were reached. The Wanderers would provide their advanced shield technology. The Builders would construct ships and habitats. The deep swimmers would share their techniques for adapting to harsh environments. And humans would provide leadership, organization, and the hybrid, human-forgotten technology that was revolutionizing everything they touched. The Free Worlds Charter was signed on New Haven exactly 1 year after humanity's arrival in the dark sectors. Representatives from 15 species put their marks on a document that promised equality, freedom, and mutual defense. We, the free peoples of the dark sectors, President Brooks read aloud, reject the tyranny of established powers. We choose cooperation over domination, growth over stagnation, hope over fear. As the ceremony ended, Paul Davis looked up at the night sky. Stars that had once seemed cold and hostile now looked like stepping stones to a greater future. The Council thought they had solved their human problem by throwing them into empty space. Instead, they had given humanity exactly what it needed most, a chance to start over and build something better. 25 years had passed since the exile. Admiral Lauren Foster stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the construction of New Terra's orbital shipyards through the massive viewing window. The structures stretched for kilometers in every direction, busy with thousands of workers from dozens of different species. Admiral, her communications officer reported, the new cruiser squadron has finished trials. All systems are performing beyond expectations. Lauren smiled. The ships being built here were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human engineering combined with forgotten technology and techniques learned from their alien allies created vessels that seemed almost alive. Director of Intelligence Sam Rodriguez materialized on the bridge's holographic display, calling from his office in the intelligence complex on New Terra's surface. Admiral, we need to talk. The situation in Council space is getting worse. Lauren nodded to her officers and walked to her private office. Once the door sealed, Sam's expression became grim. Our sources inside Council territory report complete chaos. 3 member species have withdrawn from the Alliance. The Krillians and the Vorthak are fighting a border war. Trade routes are collapsing. And this affects us how? Lauren asked, though she already suspected the answer. Refugee ships are heading toward our borders. Hundreds of them. And some of the Council members are blaming us for their problems. Lauren wasn't surprised. For years, Free World ships had been exploring the edges of their territory, mapping new systems and making contact with isolated colonies that the Council had abandoned. Word was spreading that there was a better way to live than under the Council's rigid control. Any military threats? Not yet, but the hegemony is mobilizing. They think the Council's weakness is their opportunity to expand. The hegemony was a brutal military empire from the southern edge of the galaxy. They conquered species and enslaved entire worlds. Lauren had been expecting them to test the free worlds eventually. On the planet New Terra, Admiral Ryan Peters walked slowly through the memorial gardens. He was old now, his hair white and his step careful, but his mind was still sharp as he reviewed the latest reports from his aide. The new industrial complexes are ahead of schedule, the young woman told him. Production is up 300% from last year. Peters nodded approvingly. The free worlds had become an economic powerhouse. Their hybrid technologies allowed them to build things faster, cheaper, and better than anyone else in the galaxy. What about the diplomatic situation? 12 more species have requested alliance status this month. The applications are backing up faster than we can process them. It was a good problem to have, Peters thought. When they first arrived in the dark sectors, they had been desperate refugees. Now they were the most attractive alliance in known space. Commander Elena Vasquez led the first Free Worlds expedition back toward Council space in decades. Her small fleet was officially on a mapping mission, but everyone knew they were really gathering intelligence. What they found shocked them. Captain's log. Elena spoke into her recorder. We have reached the former Council world of Kepler 9. The planet appears to be abandoned. No response to our communications. Long-range scans show the cities are empty. Her science officer looked up from his instruments. Commander, I'm reading massive orbital debris. Looks like there was a battle here recently. Elena ordered a closer investigation. The debris field told a story of desperation. Council ships had fought each other over the remaining resources of a dying world. In the end, everyone had lost. Take us to the next system, Elena ordered sadly. They found the same story repeated across dozens of worlds. The Council's rigid system had finally collapsed under its own weight. Species that had been allies for thousands of years were now enemies fighting over the scraps of their former civilization. But the free worlds faced their first real test when the hegemony invaded. The attack came without warning. A massive fleet of hegemony warships jumped into the Kepler's gate system, expecting to find scattered refugees and easy conquests. Instead, they found Admiral Foster's combined fleet waiting for them. This is Admiral Lauren Foster of the Free Worlds Alliance, she broadcast to the hegemony commander. You have entered sovereign territory without permission. Withdraw immediately. The hegemony response was predictable. Surrender your ships and prepare to be occupied. Resistance is futile. Lauren almost laughed. The hegemony clearly didn't understand what they were facing. All ships, she ordered. Battle formation Delta. Show them what 25 years of innovation looks like. The battle was over in 6 hours. The hegemony had brought 3 times as many ships, but the Free World's vessels were generations ahead in technology. Human tactical flexibility combined with forgotten energy weapons and Wanderer shield systems created a combination the enemy couldn't match. But it wasn't just the technology that won the battle. It was the coordination between species that had learned to trust each other completely. Wanderer ships provided covering fire for builder engineering vessels. Deep swimmer crews used their high-gravity conditioning to outmaneuver enemy fighters. Human commanders coordinated it all with strategies that turned chaos into victory. When the last hegemony ship either surrendered or fled, Lauren surveyed the battlefield. They had lost only 12 ships out of 300. The enemy had lost 2/3 of their fleet. Send a message to the hegemony leadership, she ordered. Any further attacks on Free World's territory will result in retaliation against hegemony home systems. We are not refugees anymore. Word of the victory spread across the galaxy faster than hyperspace could carry it. The Free Worlds Alliance was no longer just a collection of exiles and misfits. They were a major power, possibly the strongest military force in known space. President Tony Clark, who had succeeded Helen Brooks 5 years earlier, received delegations from 40 different species within a month of the battle. Some came seeking military protection. Others wanted trade agreements. Many just wanted to join an alliance that actually worked. The Free Worlds Assembly met an emergency session to handle all the applications. The Great Hall on New Terra, built to hold representatives from 20 species, now needed expansion to accommodate twice that number. We're growing too fast, warned Senator David Kim, the son of Dr. Sandra Kim, who had taken over the Scientific Research Division. We don't have the infrastructure to absorb this many new members. But Tony Clark disagreed. This is what we've been building toward, a galaxy where species work together instead of against each other. We can't turn away people who want to be part of that. Dr. Sandra Kim herself, now in her 50s, presented her latest research to the assembly. Our analysis of forgotten technology has reached a breakthrough point. We can now manufacture materials that exist only in theoretical physics. We can build ships that repair themselves. We can create energy sources that last forever. What about weapons? Asked General Alex Turner, now commander of all Free World's ground forces. We could build weapons that could destroy entire star systems, Sandra admitted. But do we want to? The question hung in the air. The Free Worlds had the power to conquer the galaxy if they chose. Their technology was superior. Their military was unbeatable. Their economy was thriving, but that wasn't who they were. We didn't come this far to become another empire, President Clark said finally. We came here to build something better, something based on choice, not force. As the assembly session ended, Admiral Foster received an encrypted message that made her smile. It came from inside Council space, from a group of young officers who were tired of watching their civilization crumble. Admiral Foster, the message read, "We've heard about the Free Worlds Alliance. We've seen what you've built. Some of us are wondering, is there room for more?" Lauren looked out at the stars, remembering the day they had been banished from civilized space. The Council had thought they were getting rid of a problem. Instead, they had created their own replacement. 50 years after the exile, Fleet Admiral Danny White stood in his command center staring at a message that had just arrived. The transmission was weak, broken up by interference, but the words were clear enough. "Please, anyone who can hear this, the Devourers have taken the Centauri systems. Council forces are retreating. We need help." Danny had heard rumors about the Devourers for months. Ships from outside the galaxy, consuming entire star systems and leaving nothing behind. The Free World's intelligence network had dismissed them as panic stories from the collapsing Council territories. Now it seemed the stories were true. "Sir," his aide Captain Lisa Park said quietly, "we're receiving a formal transmission from what's left of the Council government." Danny felt a cold anger in his chest. "Put it through." The holographic display flickered to life, showing a figure he recognized, Zexathara, the being who had pronounced humanity's banishment 50 years ago. But the proud council leader looked different now, smaller, desperate. "Admiral White," Zexathara began, its smoky form trembling. "I speak for the remaining council members. We need your help." The words hung in the air like poison. Danny remembered standing in that crystal hall as a young officer, watching his people being cast out into the void. "Go on," he said coldly. "The Devourers came from beyond our galaxy. They consume everything. Stars, planets, entire civilizations. Our fleets cannot stop them. They have taken 12 council worlds already, and you want us to help you," Danny said. It wasn't a question. You are the only power strong enough. The Free Worlds Alliance has technology we cannot match, military forces we cannot equal. Without your help, all life in this galaxy will end. Danny ended the transmission without answering. He needed to think. President Tony Clark called an emergency session of the Free Worlds Assembly. Representatives from 67 species gathered in the Great Hall on New Terra, their voices rising in heated debate. "Let them burn," shouted the Wanderer representative. "They showed us no mercy when we needed help." "The Devourers won't stop with council space," argued the Builder delegate. "If they consume that region, they'll come here next." Dr. Sandra Kim presented her analysis of the Devourer technology to the assembly. What she had learned from studying the wreckage of destroyed ships was terrifying. "They're not just a military force," she explained. "They're a consuming intelligence. Everything they destroy gets absorbed into their collective mind. They learn, they adapt, they grow stronger." "Can we stop them?" President Clark asked. Sandra hesitated. "Maybe. Our hybrid human-forgotten technology seems to disrupt their systems, but we'd need to hit them with everything we have." The debate continued for 3 days. Some argued for letting the council face the consequences of their past actions. Others insisted that helping their former enemies was the right thing to do. But it was a transmission from inside council space that changed everything. A young Vorthak officer appeared on the screen, broadcasting from a refugee ship fleeing the latest devourer attack. Behind her, children from a dozen different species huddled together in fear. "Please," she begged. "I know what the council did to you. I know they were wrong. But these children had nothing to do with that. They're just scared and alone, and they're going to die if someone doesn't help them." The assembly hall fell silent. Looking at those frightened faces, Danny remembered another group of scared children. Human children leaving their homes 50 years ago because the council said they didn't belong. "I'll take the fleet," he said finally. Admiral Foster, now commander of Free World Strategic Forces, disagreed with the decision. "Danny, this could be a trap. The council has tried to destroy us before." "Maybe," Danny replied. "But those kids in the transmission aren't our enemies. They're just people who need help." The Free World's armada that jumped toward council space was the largest fleet ever assembled. 2,000 ships from every member species, equipped with the most advanced technology in the galaxy. They arrived at Nexus Prime just as the Devourers attacked the system. The enemy ships were horrifying to look at, black metal constructs that seemed to twist reality around them. They moved like living things flowing through space instead of flying. "All ships," Danny broadcast. "Remember, we're not here for the council. We're here for everyone they couldn't protect." The battle for Nexus Prime lasted 18 hours. The Devourers had overwhelming numbers, but they had never faced Free World's technology before. Human forgotten energy weapons cut through their hulls. Wanderer shields protected Alliance ships from their consuming attacks. Builder engineering ships repaired damage faster than the enemy could cause it. But it was the coordination that made the difference. 67 species working together as one force, commanded by humans who had learned to see strength in diversity, rather than weakness. Admiral Foster led the breakthrough attack that destroyed the Devourer command ship. As the massive vessel collapsed into itself, the rest of the enemy fleet began to retreat. "They're learning our tactics," Sandra Kim warned from her research ship. "Next time they'll be ready for us." "Then we'll be ready too," Danny replied. The victory saved Nexus Prime, but more importantly, it saved the idea that different species could work together to overcome any threat. As the Free World's fleet prepared to return home, a small shuttle approached Danny's flagship. The passenger was Zexathara, coming to thank the humans personally. "You came back," the former council leader said wonderingly. "After everything we did to you, you came back to help us." Danny looked at the being who had once banished his people, to die in empty space. 50 years of anger wanted to pour out in bitter words. Instead, he found himself thinking about those scared children in the refugee ships. "We didn't come back for you," he said quietly. "We came back because it was the right thing to do." Zexthara's form shimmered with what might have been shame. "The council was wrong. We were wrong. We let fear and pride blind us to what you really were." "And what were we?" "The future. The thing we were too afraid to become." 6 months later, the remaining council species formally dissolved their government and applied for membership in the Free World's Alliance. The ceremony took place in the same crystal hall where humanity had been banished. President Clark stood where Jake Sullivan had stood 50 years earlier. But this time, instead of pronouncing judgment, he was welcoming new members to a family. "The Free World's Alliance was born from exile and rejection," he said to the assembled representatives. "But it grew into something greater because we learned that our differences make us stronger, not weaker." As the ceremony ended, children from dozens of species played together in the gardens outside the hall. Human children taught Vorthak children to play soccer. Wanderer children showed Builder children how to make their favorite snacks. Danny White watched them through a window and smiled. The council had banished humanity because they thought humans were too different to fit into their perfect order. They had been right. Humanity was different, and that difference had saved the galaxy.